game. Kind of late there, they were up 6-1, and then Texas A&M rallied with 2 in the 8th and 2 in the 9th. But I was fully invested in that hockey match, and man, oh man, did it live up everything you wanted it to be. Florida hanging on for dear life to not just blow that game, but below a 3-0 series lead. Edmonton giving it everything they had. Preston, you probably as a much higher level athlete than me, you know what exactly that's like. You're trying, you're fighting, you're scrapping and clawing, and there's just not quite enough in the tank to get that tying goal or get that tying whatever you need. And man, that was enjoyable. Like you said, you're right. 3 minutes to go. Edmonton tried to kick it into another gear. You pull the goalie. You got that wild situation taking place. That's the kind of Game 7 you like to wrap up our 2023-2024 athletic calendar year, if you will.
Yeah, and what was amazing to me is that, just like you said, you could see the fellas from Edmonton trying, but there was just nothing in the tank. These professional athletes, the most conditioned, best skaters in the universe, fatigued. There was nothing there. They could not pull it out. After that last push at 3 minutes, there was nothing there, but it was still nerve-wracking, though.
That was a lot of fun last night, and I'll talk more about that. We'll talk a little bit more about it later on here in the program as we roll along. But that was the perfect game. So really, Preston, every sport has its own little nuances and differences, and what can make it perfect when you get to the final game, whether it's say a Super Bowl or a Game 7 in Major League Baseball or Game 7 in NBA. But 2-1 where it's intense. You've got Bobrovsky, I think I can get that correct at some point this morning, basically standing on his head in goal, just defending shot after shot after shot. Edmonton flying in. 803-404-6100. I don't know if we can figure this out, what the perfect Game 7 is across the board, but that was about as good as it gets, right?
Yeah, that probably does not get better than that. That's probably the peak. I know we can search it, we can look, and there might be different ones. What comes to mind is Golden State versus was 2015, I guess. That comes to mind as being a pretty solid Golden State. Again, a team coming back from 3-1. This time not 3-0, but that sort of comes to mind as probably the best Game 7s in my recent memory. But this lived up to all the hype.
So that was the hockey portion of it. As I mentioned, the other thing going on that I started on at 7 o'clock last night was Tennessee and Texas A&M. Tennessee jumped on them, Preston, right out of the gate, a home run in the first, and then Texas A&M was able to tie it up in the third, but Tennessee quickly answered to go up 3-1 in the seventh. They would push it to 6-1, and my interest was lost. There was no flipping back and forth at that point, but Texas A&M puts 2 up in the 8th, 2 up in the 9th, but in the end, it's Tony Vitello and Tennessee taking it home, winning their first ever national championship in baseball. They celebrated. They ran around the ballpark. Tony Vitello jumped into the stands, as from what I could see, and hugged all of the Tennessee fans that made the trip. Different kind of outcome different kind of game. Ends up being a one-run game. If you're just waking up this morning, you're looking at it like, ooh, bet that was pretty good. Bet that was not a bad game there, but it took some late rallying. A total different kind of end-of-season game for the College World Series.
Well, yeah, it ended, and I don't know if Tennessee, I know they won the first number 1 seed to win in a very long time, but they didn't go wire to wire this year, but they've been very good all year, and this team has been building. And Tony Vitello's a star that's rising. And so, yeah, it was fitting for them to win. I guess Tennessee can take that home with them. As I said, I don't know whether it is about my algorithm or whatever it is on Twitter, but I see a lot of Tennessee fans for some reason, more than any other SEC fan base. So I guess I'll be seeing a lot of that today.
Yeah, the Tennessee last night, they were the first number 1 national seed entering the NCAA tournament. First number 1 national seed in 25 years, since 1999, when the Miami Hurricanes were the number 1 national seed to win it all, and they accomplished that last night. You're right about the Tony Vitello thing. We talked about paying your coaches and the SEC and money and all those things Rumors have been out there, whether they come true or not, I don't know. But rumors have been out there that Tennessee is lining up a package that's roughly $2.5 to $2.8 million to lock up Tony Vitello for quite some time. And with that in mind, it just goes to show you that the money in the SEC, it's growing exponentially. And if you win, you're going to get paid in this league, and you're going to be paid handsomely, because we'll bring up Brett Venables later on in the program, who had one winning season, Preston, and he was able to negotiate a brand new contract over the weekend to get himself into the $8 million club.
Yeah, and Bill, when you say winning season, I need you to really he had a winning season in the sense that he won more games than he lost, right? But he didn't have a winning season. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know who Oklahoma was bidding against or what this was about, but they feel like they got the right guy. I guess he pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I'll get into that a little bit later on this morning as well. And again, that's a money thing that you're just strictly talking about there. If Tennessee's willing to pay Tony Vitello over $2.5 million, which would indeed make him the highest paid baseball coach, college baseball coach in the country. And then again, we'll get back into that there with Brent Venables signing his contract. Other news yesterday, Preston, I know you were probably pretty happy. Your guy, the all-name team, Cutter Woods, makes it official, flips his commitment from Wake Forest to South Carolina.
All-time name, also wearing the bonnet. He's made himself a social media meme, and I always put an emphasis on him being a winner. So I'm excited about this.
We'll talk a lot about that coming up here in the next segment. Get into Preston's thoughts on that. Also, J.C. Sherbert set to join us this morning. We'll get his thoughts on that. Plus the wing eating contest that took place downtown. Jamie Bradford.
Do we have any more details?
Do what?
Do we have any more details?
We do not have more details. We do not. I do not have more. I will acquire them in hour number 2. We will get more details on the wing eating contest.
I actually texted JC on Wednesday, because that's after the show. I flew out. Or no, we didn't do the show on Wednesday. Maybe I did my own show. I don't know. But anyway, Wednesday I flew out and was picked up from the airport. We were coming down. It's like, let's find someplace different that we haven't been to before. Get some good Chicago-style pizza and all that. And we ended up in a town that I'm familiar with, Tinley Park, which is not terribly far from where J.C. Sherbert is.
Okay.
And so I sent him a note. I said, hey, have you been to Ed and Joe's? He's like, well, you guys are like right by me. And he was getting ready to fly out the next day. So I felt close to JC for a few hours.
For a few hours.
Yeah.
A few hours. It's not
bonding.
Not bad. Well, we'll bond with him coming up in hour number 2. 803-404-6100. So those are the big things. Game 7 in Stanley Cup. Game 3, final game of the College World Series. The Tennessee wins, and South Carolina has their quarterback now in the 2025 class, and we'll talk a little bit about that in Cutter Woods next with Preston Thorne, as Preston is very happy, I believe, the all-name team, Cutter Woods, and as Preston has said, that the gorgeous hair. Is that how you would describe it?
Well, yes, he has a head of hair that he takes care of very well underneath the top.
There you go. We'll get into that a little bit when we come back. You're listening to all three of us together for at least an hour. Jen Jensen back in studio, Preston Thorne on the phone lines, me in studio. You're listening to the early game. Bill Gunner for Old Timey Meat Market. Let me tell you what, this past weekend, whew, boy, did I do it up big with Old Timey Meat Market. Number one, we had about 15 cheddar and bacon burgers. Those are absolutely delicious. And if you're thinking about a great summer cookout with a great hamburger, Old Timey Meat Market has handmade thick patties, cheddar, bacon in them. Absolutely delicious on the grill. If you want to take it a step further, you can go jalapeno and pepper jack. That's right. That was just two of the items on the Gunner family menu. We also did a few oysters. We've had chicken salad, a few steaks. You get the point. Old Timey Meat Market is your one-stop shop for your summer grilling needs. Whatever it is you need, they've got you taken care of. Visit one of their 3 locations, St. Andrews Road in Irmo, South Congaree, or the Lexington store. Trust me, you cannot go wrong. Whether it's burgers, whether it's chicken, whether it's steak, Old Timey Meat Market has you covered. Stop by today. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
And taking a peek out there on the highways, looking pretty good for your Tuesday morning. No major slowdowns to speak of. We welcome that and hope that continues throughout the morning. We do have a couple more days of the extreme heat. 98 for the high today with a heat index of 105. Pretty much the same for tomorrow. And 97 on Thursday with chance for some scattered thunderstorms. 96 on Friday. Isolated thunderstorms a possibility as well. Starting off the morning, a little warm. It's 81 on the early game.
.617 as we get you up and get you going here. Wrapping up, really, Preston, the kind of the end of the sporting calendar for 2023-2024 last night. Collegiately, you wrap up that academic athletic year starting last August with soccer and with football and with volleyball and rolling into basketball season and so forth and so on, and then you get into baseball and softball season, and that comes to a conclusion last night. And I don't know if you called that. It was and then as far as the NHL goes, and I don't know if you called it, it was the longest NHL season ever, over 200 days. I forget the exact number that they gave last night, but it kind of went to our point. They only have about a 130-day break before it kicks, before it gets right back into gear or whatnot.
Yeah, I didn't catch that specific stat, but I did catch them talking about one of the players was drafted on that day whenever they were drafted 13 years ago. And I was trying to put the timeline together, and that makes a lot of sense. This season went so long, they used to have the draft at the end of the season, but the season's gone so long. I wonder what that accounts for. Again, I'm not deep in hockey knowledge and the hockey calendar, so I didn't understand why that happened, but yeah, they'll be strapping back up and getting to play very shortly.
So we wrapped up all that, and again, we'll continue to talk about that this morning. But the other news locally, South Carolina lands an in-state quarterback, Cutter Woods, making the decision yesterday to flip his commitment. He had taken a official visit this past weekend to South Carolina, had received the Gamecock offer, Preston, less than 12. He received it 12 days ago. I was going to say less than 12 days from when he committed. He was offered June the 13th, took the official visit this past weekend, and flips his commitment. You mentioned it, a winner at Westside High School, led his team to a state championship after throwing for 3,915 yards. He threw for 42 touchdowns. He also rushed for 345 yards and 5 touchdowns. As a sophomore, Preston, he threw for 3,013 yards and 28 touchdowns. This is a guy who had offers from Auburn, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Coastal Carolina, had been committed to Wake Forest, and South Carolina flips him. And you know, you've got to get these guys now, and the part about this is you've got to have a guy in Dow Loggins who can develop him. That's the big thing, because Cutter Woods is going to have some time. If Lenora Sellers is everything that we expect him to be, Dante Reno's there too. Cutter Woods can come in and develop a little bit and try and build depth for your quarterback room and not have a guy transferring out, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not a film guy, so I haven't actually seen him. I just know his numbers, and I know the fact that, as you said, he's taken Westside to their first state championship. At least I know the first at that level. So, to me, I put a high premium on a quarterback in the high school realm being able to win it. I talked about it last week. We were talking about Trevor Lawrence and how he has won at every level. He won at high school. He won in college. And he has yet to do it in the NFL. But I have to take some solace in knowing that he's a winner, as opposed to say Kyler Murray, who never won. Even though he's been the best player at every single level, he's never actually won games. And that could be something old school. That might not be what you would draft somebody on or make your determination on, but I just put a high premium on somebody who actually takes the team from one level to the next.
Well, I think it's an interesting concept. It's neat to hear you talk about it, having played college football and obviously played for John McKissick, and also played with Bennett Swigert, who was, you mentioned, a winner. Definitely at the high school level, y'all won a state championship. And one of the things that I remember doing the show several years ago that was just kind of brought up, and I kind of shrugged it off, but I'm hearing you say it. When Ryan Holinsky committed to South Carolina, there was a couple people who kind of made a point, hey, this guy's such a high-profile recruit, yet his high school team has a losing record. And, you know, look, Ryan Holinsky's still in college, by the way, and in a quarterback battle up there in Northwestern, which we may be tracking that a little closer than we should be in when we get to August. But I think that is an interesting concept you talk about when you look for a guy that's maybe not just an elite quarterback. What intangibles does he have? What does he do to bring the team together?
I think at the quarterback position, I think it is extremely important, because at the high school level, somebody who is supposed to be a four-star guy, you're head and shoulders better than everybody else. If you're the quarterback and you hold the ball in your hands every single play and have determination on how you can make plays, there should be an opportunity for you to win. For example, and these guys didn't necessarily work out at the college level, with the Carry-On Jordan and Luke Doty. Both of those guys were winners at the quarterback position in high school. For their skills, maybe it didn't work out or whatever, but the idea that they can come in and be a winner and set the tone for their team. And it's a small sample size, but Ryan Holinsky has not won at any level in his college career. Still has had the same arm talent, still can throw the ball and do whatever else he did. But the number one thing I look for in a quarterback is his ability to win. You have to win a state championship. That's better. But I need your team to be good if you're a good quarterback. 803-404-6100. So Cutter Woods makes his decision yesterday again. Through last year in leading Westside to a state championship, threw for 3,915 yards and 42 touchdowns. Also rushed for 345 yards and 5 touchdowns. Gamecocks now in the 2025 rankings, in the recruiting rankings, up to 22 now. They do have. I'm going off of 24/7 Sports for those wondering. They're up to number 22. They now have 4 4-star recruits, 15 total commitments, and 88.34 recruiting average grade, if you will, for their class. So moving along, unfortunately, Preston, the thing is, in the SEC, even though you're right there around being a top 20 overall class in the country, which you'd go, oh, that's not bad, you're 9th in the SEC. Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M all leading the way. LSU 6th, Tennessee 7th, Texas 8th, and South Carolina with the 9th best class right now in the SEC. And that brings us back around to a part that Steve Spurrier, I thought, really utilized early in his career. There were some good recruiting classes. There was one really elite class, but you had guys who knew how to develop. You had the Brad Lawings when Lorenzo Ward was in the defensive backfield, Ellis Johnson at linebacker, as the linebacker coach. You had guys who really knew how to develop some of these mid 3-star prospects. And I think you mentioned it last time, Devin Taylor was the one that jumped out to you the most. Yeah, Devin Taylor's a great example. A guy that came from Buford, 6'7" or 8" or 6'12", however tall he was, as a beanpole, a solid football player, but he had to get under the tutelage of Brad Long in order to become what he ended up becoming. And I don't believe there was a lot of people standing in line for Devin Taylor as far as what he was going to do, but Brad Long saw something. He knew that he could take this piece and turn him into something else. Melvin Ingram, similar way. A lot of those guys were taken and developed into solid football players, and that's where coaches that coach at South Carolina, that's where they're going to have to earn their money in the development piece. Recruiting is great, but walking into a high school or walking into a family's home wearing a South Carolina jacket is not the same as wearing a Georgia jacket. So you're going to have to be able to find guys who want to come to South Carolina, and can you bring them in and develop them into good players, because a lot of players still have a lot of growing left once they get to college.
Yeah, you got to, in my opinion, that's going to always be kind of the recipe for South Carolina until they get to the point where they're landing, if they ever get to the point where they're landing top 10, top 8 recruiting classes, and you're bringing in that full class of elite level players. You've got to have guys who can develop at a high end. And with all that in mind, when you develop at a high end, that gives you a little more leeway. So you look at guys this year like Sterling Lucas, obviously what he can do with the edge position and the rushers. You know, we've talked about Travian Robertson, what he can do with the interior defensive linemen there. You back it out to Clayton White, who's now got some really good athletes at the linebacker position. It's going to be really important that this year, more so than ever, I think, we're talking about a huge year 4 for Shane Beamer's overall program, that player development really shines through. When you talk about, I mean, you just go to the wide receiver position, and Mike Furry, they're coaching up wide receivers, a position that's got a lot of questions surrounding it, coaching those guys up. Player development this year, I think it is going to be the biggest thing to South Carolina getting to 7, 8. If they can surpass 8 wins, Preston, they're going to have to coach these guys up. You have some really good players. You have some nice players, but, you know, you go and you look at that defensive line with Hemingway and with Boogie Huntley. Again, development. That's where Brad Lawing took good players and made them great.
And, Bill, I'm not sure when development got separated from what we used to call it, and we used to just call it coaching. I don't know when it became a special skill as to development. I know we emphasize, can he recruit well. All right, cool. Once you have somebody that's in your gym, now you have to be able to make them into a player. And that was, once upon a time, Bill, that was just called coaching. I don't know when it became development or when you separated these different tabs. But, yeah, can you coach the dudes that you have in your room and make them better?
I think
coaches have done for a long time.
Yeah, I think when we went from the defensive end position to edge, I think that's. I think it was tossed in with that. I think it was tossed in with that. I think it was tossed in. 803-404-6100. That's how you can weigh in if you want to do so this morning. Coming back, we'll talk a little baseball, some transfer portal and team nuggets to get into. Give you a little update on some guys. South Carolina landing a transfer commitment yesterday from Clemson. And we'll talk a little bit about that. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Preston Thorne, Jen Jensen. It's the early game.
Preston here. Let me tell you about my friends at Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. So if your glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. If it's a cracked windshield, that's no problem. You might be driving behind a four-wheeler like I am now, 18-wheeler, and get your windshield cracked, no problem. Absolute Glass can come out and take care of that for you. They'll come to your location and replace it for you, usually for free, and they work directly with the insurance company to take away the headache. Now, if you're looking to increase the value of your home with new windows or mirrors, Absolute Glass will come out and take care of that for you too. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. I say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out online at absoluteglassinc.com. That's online at absoluteglassinc.com.
And no accidents to report at this time. We don't appear to have any major slowdowns. And I hope I'm not jinxing things for the morning. But no, it looks really nice out there. It's just warm, that's for sure. And it's going to be a couple exceptionally hot days here. 98 for the high today, 99 tomorrow. The heat index is around 105 are expected. Come Thursday, some scattered thunderstorms. 97 will be the high. Maybe a couple isolated storms on Friday, 96. Basically, we stay in the upper 90s through the weekend. But right now, it is a warm start. It is 81 on 107.5 The Game.
.634. as we get you up and going. All right, it took me about 34 minutes because, boy, after staying up to watch hockey last night, I opened with the yawns there right before we opened the program. I was yawning like crazy, but I'm good and going now. A little coffee. Hope you're up and moving around as well. Jen Jensen is back. We'll get a detailed breakdown from her later on in the program of her romp through the Midwest there for a family wedding and get more information on that. But Preston Thorne joining us this morning on the phone and talking a little football recruiting in the previous segment. Gamecocks flipping Wake Forest quarterback commitment Cutter Woods yesterday. He is now a South Carolina commitment. And on top of that, Paul Molinari, Monty Lee, they land a transfer from Clemson, Preston Thorne. Now, this is not the first time. This is not exactly something brand new in baseball, but Nathan Hall announcing his pledge to South Carolina last night. Monty Lee was the one who recruited him to Clemson. Terry Rooney has evaluated him in person already in the Cape Cod League and made the decision to offer him. Hall picked South Carolina over North Carolina, Vanderbilt, and others. The main competition was North Carolina. Athletic outfielder is the way John Whittle describes him. So South Carolina goes into the transfer portal and it looks like I'm going off of John Whittle. Looks like picks up a very good center fielder for next year.
Yeah, any pieces that they need to get in. And I guess we're just going to have to figure out what the new coaching staff strategy is as far as the type of players that they like to recruit and the type of players that they like to go after and what all their philosophies are as far as the transfer portal is concerned. So it's all interesting. Obviously, there was previous ties to Monty Lee with this young man coming through. So we'll see.
One other thing to note that I will laugh about for a second. Terry Rooney has made himself feel right at home, Preston Thorne. He has bought into everything. Have you noticed what he's doing when he gets a commitment?
For some reason, his is not coming up on my algorithm yet. I have to put him in. Wait, now, okay, let me hear what he's doing.
He has got his own version of the welcome home that he is putting out. So he is this, give me a second. I've got somewhere I'm going to go with this, but yes, he has got his own version of the welcome home tweet, and we kind of talked about this from a standpoint of guys kind of taking the reins from Paul Molinari. Paul Molinari at 66, maybe not the most savvy when it comes to social media, maybe not knowing how to do a little bit of promoting of the program. Terry Rooney handling it with his own type of welcome home tweets.
I'm now going to have to go check those out because I imagine Coach Canary is just sitting there like, yeah, do one of those things that you do on the Twitter machine. Yeah. I like that. Whatever it is, Terry's got it.
So he's got that, and he puts that out. South Carolina also, by the way, yesterday getting a commitment from a Miami transfer. They pick up a pitcher yesterday, Ashton Crowther, out of Miami, redshirt. He'll be a redshirt sophomore. He was a redshirt freshman last year, just 1-4 with a 7.36 ERA, giving up 46 hits, 29 walks, and 28 strikeouts. He pitched 36 2/3 innings. Crowther is up at the Cape Cod League where Terry Rooney saw him, but 2 transfers, and that looks like what Paul Molinari, what Terry Rooney has dove into a little bit here, what Monty Lee is, Preston. It looks like they're hitting the transfer portal very hard. You kind of mentioned it. We are learning what kind of players they are bringing in to this roster to try and take the next step so that we see South Carolina in Omaha.
Which, to that point, with the pitcher, he has an extremely high ERA, gave up a lot of hits, did not have a good record, but we don't know what they're seeing in him. We don't know what type of tools that he might have that they feel that they can get their best out of him. We're not sure of the situation and things like that. So I think me personally, have to give them the benefit of the doubt in any situation that they see a guy that they're looking at. There obviously is a reason that they want to bring somebody in, because the first time when I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, that's a very high ERA. But that doesn't necessarily reflect what kind of stuff it is that the young man has, or maybe the season that he had last year or previous evaluations. I don't know. So we're kind of in the situation right now where we have to trust coaches and see what their process is.
Yeah, Crowther actually had Tommy John surgery at the start of the 2023 season. So, prior to the 2023 season. and came back this year. But this is a situation where, yeah, again, you see what Terry Rooney's doing, scouting, bringing in different guys. And again, kind of like what we know, kind of what we have seen, or what I should say, what we just talked about with development, what we were talking about, the development. Terry Rooney, maybe he looks at this guy, maybe you look at a few of these guys in the transfer portal and say, I tell you what, we can develop that guy a little bit better than the previous staff did.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it's just because it's new and shiny, but I don't know who was in charge of that on the last staff, and I don't know exactly what the breakdown was for position was, and it feels a little bit better to know that there's a specific person that is on top of this specific job. Last staff, I felt like it was a little bit muddy or cloudy, and it is a different approach than what we had in the previous staff.
So we'll continue to monitor that and keep an eye on that. South Carolina, again, is expected to or have an announcement today for another commitment as well. I apologize. I kept saying Molinari. It's Maneri. I'm having some issues speaking this morning, but South Carolina expected the baseball program expected to have another commitment later on today. 803-404-6100. How you can weigh in if you want to do so. We'll come back. Preston, you got a different kind of review. No music review this morning?
Stanley Cup review.
Stanley Cup review. We'll get back into the Stanley Cup as Preston will wrap things up with us here this morning. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Preston Thorne. She's Jen Jensen. It's the early game. 6:45 as we try and get through this first hour here. We're rolling along somewhat. Minor mistakes here and there, but we're making it through. Preston Thorne on the road this morning. He's got about 8 minutes left with us as we have talked a little bit of recruiting here this morning as it pertains to both South Carolina football and South Carolina baseball. In particular, the job Terry Rooney and Monty Lee are doing in trying to bring in players, and we'll get back into that a little bit with J.C. Sherwood coming in up in the next hour. If you want to weigh in, 803-404-6100. But last night, Stanley Cup, a lot of fun there. 2-1. It was the perfect Game 7. Neither Preston and I had a rooting interest, and all you wanted was something that came down to the wire, Preston. Something that kept your attention, that, as you said, had you on the edge of the seat, and you have a review of, was this your first time really digging into NHL Stanley Cup playoffs?
No, I typically come sniffing around the playoff times, but I haven't seen a Game 7 where I knew some of the characters that were involved in this, and obviously with the stakes being so high, it was very much something that was piqued my interest.
So what is the review of Game 7, Florida and Edmonton?
Okay, one, playoff beard, the real thing. Everybody has the playoff beard, almost in uniform. I do notice this about the playoff beard. I feel like it's a little more manicured than I remembered. These guys had very lush, they were lush, but they seemed pretty manicured. I didn't see any untamed beards. So that's the first thing. The playoff beards were definitely in effect. Number two, I am glad that I did not have a rooting interest in that game, because it would have been tough on anybody who was cheering for these. But I found myself, like I said, on the edge of my seat, looking, making noises. What's going to happen? I don't think it would have been a lot of fun if I actually was a fan of one of those teams. What do you think?
Well, if you were a Florida Panther fan, I think you would have had a blast. Bill,
do you think they had any fun from the time it was 2-1 to the end of the game? Do you think they took a breath? I think that was torture.
Well, it depends. Now, it depends. It depends. For me personally, watching that game, I felt like if Edmonton ever got the lead, they would win the game. Florida scored very quickly early on. Edmonton answered back, I think, within the next 3 or 4 minutes, and it was 1-1. And I really felt like that's the part where, yes, if you were a fan of either team, and maybe at that point, if you're a fan of Edmonton, you're like, all right, we've got them right where we want them. We'll get them here shortly. Maybe you're less concerned until Florida scored and took the lead. But, the one thing about hockey, unlike baseball, unlike football, if you're down in that situation, if it's close and you're down, you can't just do something to instantly take the lead. You got to score 2 goals. There's no 2-goal score, if you will. You got to score a goal, and then you got to score another goal. So even in that final 3 minutes, the way I was consuming it, Preston, and again, not being a fan now, so Florida fans might have felt different, but it wasn't like Edmonton could score a goal and beat you right then. They were going to have to score 2. So I feel like...
See, Bill, that is true. That is true. But did you see every time Conor McDavid got the puck? This dude is 10 miles per hour faster than every single other person. Every time he got the puck, I was like, oh, he's about to score. Clearly.
I agree. No, I'm with you. The way
who's this other guy? Drives them. This other dude. They got. Edmonton had the 2 best players on the team. Florida probably had the rest of the better team. But every time those 2 dudes touch the puck, it's instantly hold your breath because they might score.
Yeah, by the way, I couldn't get Maneri correctly in the previous segment. I'm definitely not trying some of the hockey names from last night. If we couldn't get an easy one, we're definitely not trying Matthew whatever for the Panthers. Yeah.
It's
Kachuk. Okay, yeah. We was not really ready to give that much of an effort after the previous segment, but
so you mean you weren't walking around saying Bobrovsky? Not in your normal.
Bobrovsky.
You don't have any Bobrovsky. You don't have any Bobrovskys in your phone. Is that what you're saying?
I do not. I could not get that one either.
When Bobrovsky is singing, does he have a vibrato?
Wow.
He might. He might.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. As I was saying, I feel I feel like stopped up, and I'm struggling to kind of talk. So we're not going to get some of these names correct in the hockey, let alone the South Dakota baseball coach. But all right, so you didn't think you would have been able to handle being a fan of either team, is what you're saying, though?
I don't think that would have been a lot of fun. I think that would, if I was the type of person to consume a game, not watching the game, maybe like you said, with your hands over your eyes, peeking through my pinkies. That's the way I would have watched that game, because that was terrifying. Then there's times where the goalie loses his stick. He's just in the crease, walking around. He doesn't have a stick. Dudes are laying on the ground. I don't think that would have been fun for me if I was a Panthers fan. Obviously, definitely not if I was an Edmonton fan.
There was also in the second period a power play for Edmonton where the Florida defender at the top, they backed into kind of their, I don't know, a diamond formation. This is where my hockey expertise comes to a complete end in terms of formations and how you handle certain things such as a power play kill. But the guy at the top of the power play kill for Florida lost his stick and was just skating around, at one point trying to dive on the ice to bat the puck down to the other end so they could make a change and he could get a stick. That was everything. You also mentioned the one about the Florida goalie losing his stick. Everything about that last night was a lot of fun. Was great to enjoy.
You think about how insane you have to be to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put my face in front of a puck to try and win this game. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Have either of y'all ever seen the bruises that some of these guys get when they catch a puck? Like I've seen the baseball bruises when you get hit with a 100-mile-per-hour fastball and something like that goes wrong. But Preston, have you ever seen anybody that gets hit with a puck like where you don't have pads?
I mean, I would imagine it's ridiculous because the puck is dense, it's oddly shaped, it's coming in at all types of angles, very fast. No, I would not be throwing my body in front of the puck to stop a goal.
No, without any padding, absolutely not. Because my son played lacrosse and he was a goalie, and how hard that ball is and the speed at which it's coming, I can't fathom. And I saw the bruises on him from that. So a puck, that's a whole other level.
It was fun. Fun night. Great way to end the Stanley Cup playoffs. You might not have had to watch all of it to thoroughly enjoy last night, but it was just in terms of pure sport, in terms of sitting down and watching, even if you don't really understand what was going on or don't quite grasp the game of hockey. Look, I still have yet to completely figure out what icing is, but that last night, Preston, is why I have said, and especially when you don't have a rooting interest, when you don't have a team, last night is exactly why I have said the Stanley Cup playoffs actually might be the best playoff, however you want to label it, better than NBA, better than Major League Baseball. I'll probably even take the championship when you get to it, the championship of that over this Super Bowl, as crazy as that might sound, because the intensity that they have, the pace which they play, the way it just goes, it is a lot of fun to watch, and last night was a blast. 803-404-6100 if you want to weigh in. Final thoughts from you, Preston Thorne.
Final thoughts will be back in studio tomorrow to have more conversation. But yeah, the hockey was tremendous. Lots of fun. Bill, I think I can explain icing to you because, as I've told you before, NHL '94 was my game, so I think I have understanding of icing from our video game past.
There you go. All right. Well, maybe we'll get a little breakdown. I'll get a little learning lesson tomorrow from Professor Thorne as he gets back in studio, and the three of us all get back together in one place. 803-404-6100 is how you can weigh in. Greg, by the way, asked, wasn't Edmonton up 3-0? Nope. The Florida was up 3-0. Edmonton rallied. But Preston, safe travels. We will talk to you tomorrow. We will be back. J.C. Sherbert joining us at about 7:20 this morning. It's the early game.
Preston Thorne here. Welcome to our friends at Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. So if your glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. If it's a cracked windshield for driving on the highways like I've been on this morning, no problem. Absolute Glass will come out to your location, look at the windshield, give you a free quote, take care of the job, take care of the headache with no problem. Now, if you're looking to increase the value of your home with new windows and mirrors, Absolute Glass will come out and take care of that for you too. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. I say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com. That's online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com. Hey guys, it's Preston, but your broker, our broker, Benji Getty at Buford Lending. Buford Lending is a true mortgage broker offering the widest variety of government mortgage programs and the best mortgage experience for clients through its state-of-the-art technology and record low interest rates. Their goal is to make your next mortgage experience closing easier, cheaper, faster, and friendlier. Since 1997, Benji and the team have served thousands of investors with their dreams of real estate investing. And Buford Lending specializes in DSCR and fix and flip finance. Benji and his team are FA, FHA, VA, and USDA government loan experts and offer competitive jumbo finance. So give Benji Getty and Buford Lending a call. We want to be your broker at 843-524-2404. That's 843-524-2404.
And out there on the highways, we aren't reporting any accidents, and I'm not wishing that on anyone by any means. But no, really, it's clear out there this morning, so we'll enjoy that for your Tuesday. Heat is the main story. 98 for the high today, 99 tomorrow. Heat indexes could hit as much as 105 both days. 97 for Thursday with some scattered thunderstorms possible, maybe some isolated thunderstorms on Friday. And just kind of keeping that upper 90s really throughout the weekend. So buckle up. We're in the start of the warmer part of the summer. It is currently 81 to start your morning on the early game.
Hour one in the books as we get you up and get you going 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, June the 25th. Hope you are doing well this morning. Jen Jensen back with us. She's got tendonitis in one of her hands. I feel like I'm playing through a slight cold right now. Boy, the summer has gotten to us a little bit.
Clearly, yeah. No issues. I can still, if necessary, I can still backhand you. It probably just hurts you a little bit more.
Oh.
So just keep that in mind. But just a little flare. So I'm waiting to see if we can get to settle down a little bit. Maybe we'll get a little shot. We'll be
There you
good.
go.
Good to go.
All right. So we got Jen back. We'll be back the rest of the week. And then next week, obviously with the 4th of July, will be a bit of a vacation week for all of us as we will.
And race is coming up in Chicago. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, you got that. And we go into the month of July. When is that race? Which one is that?
That's the Chicagoland Street Race.
And when is that?
That's actually a week from Sunday. So July 7th or July 6th.
So yeah, we've got all kinds. Next week's a big week. We get 4th of July. We'll hit the midpoint of the summer for everybody and start to turn our attention from yesterday. We're now less than 3 weeks away. Yesterday was 3 weeks from the start of SEC Media Days, and we'll get back into that a little bit coming up. J.C. Sherbert's set to join us here later on this hour.
I think maybe he was primping. Maybe he forgot that this isn't TV. This isn't a live stream.
It's true.
So he didn't really need to quaff as much.
Totally understand. Yeah. Totally understand. Got to look pretty for radio. I think of that each and every morning when I am selecting the hat that I'm going to wear. So totally understand where he is coming from there. Let's get out to the Love Chevy phone lines. 803-404-6100. William wants to weigh in on the College World Series and some Gamecock football. William, how you doing this morning? What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, congratulations to Tennessee. I mean, that was a crazy game, great game. Their pitching was outstanding. That's basically all I wanted to say. But on the Gamecock football, I just kind of wanted your opinion on, how do you see Carolina doing this year with the schedule, the young quarterback? And I was talking with a buddy of mine, and we were talking, hey, if Carolina doesn't make it to a bowl game this year, how does that shake out for Shane Beamer and his future? And if he does go to a bowl game, go 6-6, how do you think that's going to shake out? And I'll hang up, and thanks for taking my call.
Well, appreciate the phone call, William. Let's talk a little bit about what you brought up there. We'll get into that. J.C. Sherbert said to join us in the next segment. But there's – think of how to word this properly. I think there's a lot of variables as to how we will judge this season. And because of, let's just start with the schedule, as you brought up. We know the first 3 weeks, and I think the first 3 weeks are extremely pivotal, especially week 2 and week 3. South Carolina should beat Old Dominion, I believe. Don't hold me to this because I'm don't have it right in front of me, but I think off the top of my head they were a 17. They've already been listed as a 17-point favorite against Old Dominion. I know it's a 2-touchdown favorite. I don't want to say it's 17, but I could be wrong on that. Week 2 and week 3, that Kentucky game, you circle that thing because LSU the following week, LSU is going to come here. It's going to be a noon game, and that's at least a home game, but LSU is going to be very talented as they are under Brian Kelly, and you don't want to start SEC play 0-2. Your first games, you don't want to drop those. And so if you've got to, in my opinion, beat Kentucky. That would get you off to a 2-0 start. I think would build a little bit of momentum within the fan base and put everybody in a good mood. You get LSU there in week 3, and then you get Akron before the end of the month in the bye. So, just talking about it, really, really important to be 3-1 by the time you wrap up September, because you got the bye week September 28th, because then here comes this gauntlet of games, and I think this is what a lot of people are circling. The month of October is going to be brutal. You could conceivably, in October, play 3 top 10 teams. You'll have Ole Miss coming here October 5th, Alabama October 12th, and Oklahoma on the road October 19th before your other bye week, October 26th. But it's not inconceivable that South Carolina ends up playing 3 top 10 teams in 3 consecutive weeks, 2 of which would be on the road. Actually, as we sit here today, my guess, prediction, if you will, is that Ole Miss will be a top 10 team and will come here on October the 5th, and Alabama will still be a top 10 team, and you go there on October the 12th. I would probably not have Oklahoma as a top 10 team, but they could be. Then you go into the month of November where it's Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Wofford, and, of course, Clemson. And where I'm going with some of this is some of these games, you can't get blown out. You can't come out and look unprepared. If South Carolina, you mentioned 6-6, William. If South Carolina was 6-6, but they were really competitive, maybe something happened in the fourth quarter of a few losses, say to a Texas A&M or an Oklahoma or an Alabama or a Mississippi, where those teams who are more talented than you just find a way in the fourth quarter, and you go, okay, this team, young quarterback, young at certain positions, I can see them developing, and South Carolina work to get to 6-6. You can live with that. Now 6-6 with ugly losses, 3 touchdown losses, 31-10 to Alabama, to Oklahoma, to A&M. You lose again to Missouri. You get blown out by Clemson. Yet you still go 6-6 somehow. Well, that's totally different. Now all of a sudden you're talking about, okay, we weren't competitive against the teams we're trying to catch. We only maybe slipped up and beat a Kentucky team who I think South Carolina, by the way, I don't know if they will be favored, but I think they should be in that game. It'll be kind of interesting. But so I guess to answer your question, and we'll talk a lot of football coming up with SEC Media Day 3 weeks away. 3 weeks from yesterday, Shane Beamer will speak in Dallas at SEC Media Days. It's going to be kind of a game-by-game scenario here where also, do you see improvement? Will you see improvement from August 31st to November 30th? Do you see them getting better every week? Does South Carolina close out? Those are winnable games going into Clemson. Texas A&M here. Texas A&M still going to be under a transition with Mike Elko. Vanderbilt, obviously, South Carolina should beat Vanderbilt. I know South Carolina cannot get over the Missouri hump. Missouri has turned into the new Kentucky, but you get them here in Columbia in a game that I'm sure will be circled. Wofford is a game you should win. So it's not inconceivable that South Carolina could close going into Clemson, going into Thanksgiving, on a 4-game win streak. Those will be winnable games. I'm not sure if South Carolina will win them. So that's why I tell you there's a lot of variables when I look at how we will define this season, and it's going to be, unless the wheels come off the wagon before November 30th, I think it's going to be one of those things that on December 1st, it would actually be December 2nd, when we all regroup in here after the Clemson game and we look back at the season, we'll pick and choose what we think to define where this program is going. So that's a long-winded answer, which doing sports talk radio, you tend to do long-winded answers, especially when it's just me and Jen. But the bottom line is I think there's going to be a lot of variables there for how we look at this season. Brad weighs in and says, no matter how we look, 6-6 is a failure. Steve weighs in and says, no way they are favored in Kentucky. And I tell you what, Jen, let's do this. Let's play. This is Seth Emerson. Used to work here in Columbia, now with The Athletic. He was on with Paul Feinbaum yesterday talking about upcoming topics at Media Days. I mentioned we're 3 weeks away from that. We'll have plenty of coverage for you right here on 107.5 The Game. But let's listen. This is Seth Emerson yesterday talking to Paul Feinbaum about the upcoming topics at SEC Media Day.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I speak for myself also, where it seems I've just been writing about these off-field and the business of college sports topics for months, basically the entire off season. And it's hard to avoid it because it's what's happening. It's what's going on, and it's so important. And events are changing, especially with the House settlement. But, you know, I do want to talk football, and I do want to talk on the field. And maybe there will be big events between now and Dallas that we'll have to talk more about things and ask the coaches about these things. The roster limits and walk-on situation could still be up front. There could be movement on that between now and Dallas. But I think for the most part, it'll be a little refreshing. It'll be good to get back to talking about who's your quarterback, which players – which freshmen do you have look good? Even, which transfers look good? And maybe we'll start arguing over who's going to be. Is it going to be Texas or Georgia that gets picked to win the SEC or someone else? Who are the 3 or 4 or 5 most likely teams in the SEC to make the playoff. Because I think there's also, Paul, this realization that we're about to enter this just hugely new situation. There's no divisions in the SEC anymore. We're not going to pick SEC West winner, SEC East winner. We're going to pick one. But beyond that, you're going to have the playoff. And it's a 12-team playoff now. And how many can you go 9-3 and still make the playoff? And that kind of stuff is going to be refreshing. I think it's going to be good for us to be able to talk about those kind of things rather than, revenue sharing.
Seth Emerson yesterday with Paul Feinbaum. As we are now starting to look ahead to SEC Media Days. And he does make a point. I feel like last year maybe we should have talked a little bit more about that, it being the final year of the divisions. And Georgia obviously did win the final Eastern Division there. That kind of was interesting. But now you pick one, as we just talked about. You make one decision there on who is going to win it. And interesting, he mentioned Texas. I know Texas was in the playoff last year. Alabama was in the playoff, but Alabama obviously switching coaches now. Nick Saban stepping away. Interesting that you mentioned that. But we'll have a lot to talk about. And I do like what Seth Emerson said there and that about talking about actual football-related things and not talking about revenue sharing or NIL or transfer portal or all these things, but actually talking about on-the-field stuff for South Carolina, for example. And then going back to what Steve said about not being favored against Kentucky, you think about that South Carolina-Kentucky game, that's going to be two quarterbacks really being thrown into the spotlight in that game. Just think about this. Brock Vandagriff expected to be the quarterback at Kentucky. Obviously, five-star recruit, went to Georgia, never was able to really get on the field. Lenoris Sellers, we know his story here. We've talked a lot about him. But you talk about a monster game for two quarterbacks that are going to be expected to carry their teams. And that game up there in Lexington will feature two young quarterbacks. It'll be that 3:30 ABC start. Both will have the week one game. I would expect the week one game under their belt, but that's going to make things. That is a football related topic that we will get into that has nothing to do with NIL or transfer portal or anything else. So look forward to doing that. We'll speak a little football. We'll talk a little football. J.C. Sherbert set to join us. We'll also talk some wing eating contest as well. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Jen Jensen, J.C. Sherbert due up here this hour. It is the early game. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing. For nearly 30 years, Mid-State Roofing and owner-founder Larry Leitner, they have been the proven leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry. It's their history that is your assurance that their professionals at Mid-State Roofing will provide proper advice, service, and results to the needs of your facility. And let's be honest, you're not thinking about your roof on your facility right now. But I guarantee you this, Larry Leitner and the Mid-State Roofing family are, and they're ready to help you. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call Mid-State Roofing and speak with an on-call technician or a Mid-State Roofing employee, and they will help you with a maintenance contract to protect that roof. So whether it's a high-rise or a hospital, manufacturing or industrial, Mid-State Roofing is ready to help you. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Give them a phone call, 803-356-1919. Again, that's 803-356-1919. Call Mid-State Roofing. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
And out there on the highways this morning, we are reporting an accident on I-77 northbound between 12th Street and the bridge. So between exits 2 and 4 on I-77 northbound, there is an accident reported. Aside from that, all else going well. And it's going to be warm, so just hydrate and plan accordingly. 98 and 99 today and tomorrow. Heat indexes likely of 105 both days. Come Thursday, could see some scattered thunderstorms and a high of 97, maybe a couple thunderstorms on Friday, 96 for the high. Right now it is warm, 82 on the early game.
Eight zero 404-6100 is how you can weigh in. As always, a reminder, you can go to our live stream powered by Integrated Media on YouTube. You can go check it out, the Game TV Radio, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass, where you can go and weigh in. Steven weighing in on some of the conversation we were just having on our live stream. Steven saying again, you go to this live stream and chat there with everybody. 6-6 or 7-5, no matter, is a tremendous year, and Beamer should be considered for coach of the year with his brutal schedule. You have to give Beamer time, have to give him at least 7 years. And we'll get into a little bit of that here this morning. J.C. Sherbert joining us as he does each and every Tuesday. Welcome in, young man. I know you were fresh off a wild weekend down there in 5 Points where I believe y'all crowned another wing eating champion. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely. Congratulations to Ja'Kai Moore. I think he was second last year. And he topped his Northern Virginia buddy and teammate. They're both from kind of the same area of Virginia, Rashawn Lee and Ja'Kai. And Ja'Kai won, so I'm happy for him. He's a tremendous individual, great kid. Has been through a lot in his young life, and certainly during his time at Carolina with injuries and stuff, and has stuck with it. And I admire Ja'Kai Moore as much as just about any player on the roster, just for his ability to get out there and keep going, and was happy to see him win. But it was a good time down there at CB18 Bar and Grill, Tanny Hill's place there on the corner. We those of us that are our age knew it as Dr. Rocco, but it's become kind of a nice Gamecock hub. They got the Breakers place next door with live music. It's a nice venue. We can see concerts and stuff. That's where we actually had the contest. We got to meet Cornbread Cowboy. One of our partners, Sassafras Studios, came out with selling buttons, and that was good to see those guys. And some basketball players, Nick Pringle, Zach Davis, and Colin Murray Bulls were all there. And then we had a bunch of linemen, probably all the young linemen, Pringle, Josiah Thompson, taking pictures and signing posters for Gamecock fans. And thanks to all that came out. I'd like to say it was a tremendous financial success, but these things sometimes don't go the way you think. But we were able to put some money in some players' pockets, and that's what's important. And it's mostly important that Gamecock fans had a great time. So it was a good event. Got back actually yesterday morning. Did not time my flight the right way for Sunday morning. I missed it, but thanks to the folks at United over there at Columbia Metropolitan Airport for getting me back and running the next day. So that was good. Yeah, it was crazy. I actually got up. I was fine, and just basically kind of thought, well, there's nobody at that airport. I can just whisk on through, and I was unfortunately wrong about that. And so accidentally didn't do it, and then the rest of them were full. But did have a good time, and woke up this morning with a little bit of a head cold, so I needed a little bit of time to kind of not sound like a Kermit the Frog when I came on with you guys.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that was my whole first hour trying to trying to handle something. I feel like I might be getting something like that as well. But let's go real quick on the wing eating contest. We were talking with our buddy Jamie Bradford yesterday about this. Did we get one of the slight flaws fixed this year? We didn't just dump a bunch of hot wings, like not spicy, but wasn't it last year that I believe they came straight from the fryer to the table?
Yeah, and that was Jakai, poor Jakai, and Charleston. That got him. He was the one he got the hot. He was at the end of the table. Got the ones right out of the fryer, and oh gosh, it was. So he didn't really get a chance to compete in Charleston, and so we fixed that this time. There were no complaints, and the down there at CB 18 they have a. Because wings basically, and I like mine well done, so you can mess them up cooking them, I think, for people like me. And my buddy Mike Morgan and I have the same taste in wings. We have to have it well done. We like the little ones, not the bigger ones. But the sauce is what matters. And the sauce master, they call him, works at CB90, and he makes a dang good sauce. So that was it was enjoyable for everybody. Also, some baseball guys out there. Matt Becker was there, Eddie Copper. Want to say thanks to those guys for coming out. Evan Stone for the baseball program as well. So all three of those sports were represented. But yeah, it was we fixed the flaw. It was a fair contest. Very exciting. And taking down Rashawn Lee is no joke when it comes to a wing eating contest. So hey, maybe that's a good sign for the Gamecocks this year. They'll pull some upsets.
No reason not to take that as a sign at this point during the summer. We'll take anything we can get that the linemen have some competition there, at least in the wing eating portion. Maybe it'll carry over to the field. Let me go back to that. We'll get into some football. I want to get into the Cutter Woods commitment with you. I tell you what, let's do that first because we've got just a few minutes left in this segment. Your thoughts on yesterday, South Carolina flipping Cutter Woods from Westside High School to South Carolina from Wake Forest?
Well, he's a state champion. Plays for my friend Brian Lane, who was my quarterback at Burns High School back in the football glory days. Not to sound like Al Bundy or anything. I did play high school football for our country. But anyway, he used to say that I'm married with children for Polk High. But Brian is an outstanding coach of quarterbacks and kind of got a raw deal at Burns, ended up going to Colt Clover, won there, and then took the Westside job and won it all last year. Westside's a school with a lot of great athletes, and through the years they've sort of been an underachieving program relative to, what they've got. And first Gamecock quarterback to come out of Anderson, I believe, since Blake Williamson back in the 90s. Mo Brown, of course, was a Westside High School from Anderson player. Sean Ellis back in the day. So the Westside Rams have a tradition, and he was a big part of it. He can run, he can throw. Wake Forest, Coach Clausen, those guys do a pretty good job of evaluating quarterbacks, I think, through the years. So this could, speaking of guys like that, he kind of reminds me of some of those types of guys, like Riley Leonard that played for Duke, who's at Notre Dame now, and then Hartman, who was at Wake, who went to Notre Dame as well. That kind of guy. Can run, can throw, tough kid, really lightweight because of the academics. My understanding is Auburn can't call it, and he kind of wasn't interested in that. But staying in state and playing for the Gamecocks was something he and his parents wanted. So the Gamecocks did a good job of flipping him. So, I think that's a pretty good you lost Ryan Montgomery to Georgia, but Cutter Woods is a pretty good player himself. So I think that's a good high school quarterback to take in this class. We'll see kind of how it shakes out in the portal if they, take a portal quarterback or not. That's TB determined, TBD, a long time down the road. We'll see what happens. But I like that. Whenever there's an in-state guy that's playing at a high level, and you like him and he comes to camps and, chances are you need to take him because you don't want him to go out of state and everybody's scratching their head wondering why this kid's leading Wake Forest to the ACC championship game and, you're struggling. So that's a good pickup. I thought, I think that when you kind of look at who he is and watch him this year, it's always good for Gamecock fans, I think, to have an in-state quarterback to kind of follow and look at his progress and stuff. So that'll be good to see if the West Side Rams can compete, can repeat next. And certainly the Gamecocks are getting a guy that's going to be really well coached. So I think that's important and good pickup. And I talked about his ability to run and throw. I mean, he's not a statue in the pocket. I think he's about a 4.7 guy, so he can move around a little bit. And you're going to need that these days in college football. So I like the pickup and certainly think that he's got a future at South Carolina.
We'll get more into a little bit of the football season here. Again, we're 3 weeks away from the start of SEC Media Days. I'll get into that question Stephen asked about 6-6 and 7-5 and get JC's opinion on that when we come back. You're listening to Bill Gunner, JC Sherbert on a Tuesday. Jen Jensen, it's the early game.
Hugie at Blossom Street in downtown Columbia, report of a tie-up there. Also, Old Orangeburg Road at Old Barnwell Road, we do have a report of an accident. And one more to let you know about, I-77 northbound between exits 2 and 4. So caution if you are heading towards the northeast part of town, I-77 northbound between exits 2 and 4. And warm today for sure, exceptionally warm with the humidity in there. A high today of 98, 99 tomorrow. Heat index is likely around 105. And then we cool down to about 97 on Thursday with a couple scattered showers possible and isolated thunderstorms. On Friday, we keep the mid to upper 90s through Sunday.
$7:34 on a Tuesday morning, joined as we always are by J.C. Sherbert. We'll get some football discussion with him here in just a second, but want to remind you about the craft beer card. It is back, and you can purchase it just $79 for a $360 value. That's right. Go to 1075thegame.com and click on Sweet Deals, where you can purchase your craft beer card. That's 12 craft beer locations, $30 at each location. You do the math on that. That's $360, and you can get it for just $79. Go to 1075thegame.com and click on Sweet Deals. Let's get back into this, JC, for a second, because you know how we do during the summer and how things kind of go. And Steven hit us up. We were talking. I had a phone call here to start the hour, kind of breaking down the schedule a little bit, looking at the schedule and how we would view this thing. And it's easy. It's going to be real easy on December 2nd, I believe, December 1st or December 2nd, when we all get back together on that Monday morning after the Clemson game and we analyze the full body of the regular season, all 12 games. Doing it now is a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more fun, because we don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what we have zero clue. 6-6, 7-5 in year 4. I'll let you start with your take, and then I'll kind of give a rebuttal off of whatever you say.
Well, I mean, not all 6-6s are created equal. Not all 7-5s are created equal. I mean, I'll go back to the Spurrier era, if you will, and then I'll throw a little Muschamp in there too. You think about 2008. That team was not very good. I mean, it somehow started 7-3 with a loss to Vandy. I really need to go look at the schedule, because I sit here and ponder. So I was like, where did 7 wins come from? But I think there was kind of a weaker non-conference, and then NC State was not very good in the opener that year, and they somehow got to 7-3, and then the bottom fell out, and you got beat by Florida. You lost a very significant game to Clemson, which changed the trajectory of the Clemson program, and then waxed in the Outback Bowl. Somehow they got in the Outback Bowl, got waxed by Iowa. That team finished 7-6, but it did facilitate probably 5 or 6 coaching changes where, some of Spurrier's first staff was out, and then guys like G.A. Mangus and Jay Graham came in, and Lorenzo Ward came in. Ellis Johnson was already there. Whammy kind of came in to help him. Jeep Hunter got hired. You had a lot of guys that kind of helped to lay the foundation for that big run. And then that recruiting class, because there was a coaching change at Clemson, and I think North Carolina, Tennessee, and NC State all came open that year, if I'm not mistaken, maybe. Carolina was able to – not North Carolina and NC State, but I do think I think it was Clemson and Tennessee. NC State, North Carolina were 07. You're able to get a Devontae Holloman. The Gamecocks did land Stephon Gilmore in that class. They landed Alshon Jeffrey. That ended up being kind of one of the better classes Spurrier signed in 09. So even with all the transition and the bad finish, recruiting went well. The next year was also a 7-5, 7-6 team, but it was different. South Carolina beat Ole Miss, who was ranked 3rd in the country. They beat Clemson at home, who won the ACC Atlantic for the first time ever. They had Florida at home in that Wounded Warrior Project game, where the Gamecocks and that Florida had beaten the tar out of them the year before, and I think that score was 24-14. So there was some promise in 09, and then Marcus Lattimore comes in that offseason, and then away they go. So not all those records are created equal. Even in Will Muschamp's year, I don't think anybody would argue that the 16 team that finished 6-6, actually 6-7 after an overtime loss in the bowl, was better than the 7-6 team in 18. But 16 was a little more promising because that team really had no business being 6-6 and getting to a bowl. And then 18, there were a lot of expectations and a lot of injuries on defense and some woeful inconsistencies on offense where, some games they could score with anybody and in some games they wouldn't. That was a little more disappointing. So it kind of depends on how it all unfolds. Now, at face value, I do think it's important for South Carolina to get back to the postseason this year, get back bowl game. I think, after last year missing it, you don't want to have multiple years in a row where you're not going to bowls and, having winning seasons. And so I think that's important. I know the schedule is full of name brand teams and coaches the Gamecocks have not beaten very often if you look at it. But I also think that when you drill down on some of those teams that, they have issues too, just like everybody else. I mean, it's not, they're not this, there's no Georgia on the schedule this year. There is Alabama, and I think Alabama's going to be awfully good. But the rest of them, they've got personnel issues at certain spots, just like the Gamecocks, and they're dealing with expectations and the brutal grind of an SEC schedule as well. So, we'll see what happens. I think the one thing I will say, I think too many people are putting a lot of emphasis on this Kentucky game. Oh, my God, if they don't win in week 2, they're not going to a bowl. That's trash. I mean, come on. I mean, I get it. It's always important to beat Kentucky. It's a huge game. It's the conference opener. It's on the road. But, I kind of look at the personnel, and I look at Kentucky's defense, and I look at LSU's defense, and I'm like, well, Kentucky's defense scares me a whole lot worse, not to mention it's on the road than an LSU team that's, trying to really find its way on that side of the ball. So, and then they come in having lost, 3 first-round draft picks on their offense. So, I don't, it's LSU. It's going to always, it's tough to play them. But, you got to look at the players and who they got back and, see through some of the hype. So, I think Carolina's going to be fine. I think that at the end product, hey, it a lot depends on that game at the end of the year too, right, Bill? You go 7-5 and win it, everybody's singing Kumbaya and happy and celebrating and cutting cart flips. But if you lose it, it always leaves a bad taste in your mouth, even if you're like 10-2. So that's just kind of how that goes. But I do think it's a realistic, achievable goal for Carolina to win more than they lose this year and get back to the postseason. And, you keep recruiting and go from there.
One thing I'll say, 6-6, I know we talk a lot about ball games and their relevance now to programs. You go 6-6, I think you got to win that bowl game. It's actually important to, as you just said, have a winning record. I previously, before you came on, though, did stress some of the importance of the Kentucky game up there because Brock Vandergriff will be getting his first legitimate start. He should start the season opener, barring something happening in August. But going back to, you look at this back half of the schedule, and we'll get into this. JC's going to stay with us till about 8:15 this morning. But that back half, aside from the Clemson game, depending on how you feel about the talent of South Carolina, it's not as daunting as one might make it. A&M comes here in November. We'll see what they are with Mike Elko. I know they've got talent on their team, but that's still going to be a transition year. South Carolina should win the Vanderbilt game. JC, I brought this up. Missouri has become the new Kentucky. You look at what they're doing, and South Carolina really needs to circle that game. You've got to somehow find a way to start beating Missouri to get back to where you want, especially now with no divisions. Wofford should be winnable, and then you wrap it up. It's not inconceivable. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's not inconceivable that South Carolina could be riding a 4-game win streak going into the Clemson game. And that's part of how you look at this schedule or how you look at the result is, are they playing better at the end of the year? Have they survived that gauntlet that's going to be Ole Miss, goes Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma? And can they get to the back half of the year and maybe have you won 4 in a row, given that the 2 really tough ones, are, again, not counting Clemson, but the two really tough ones are at home, A&M coming here and Missouri. So we'll continue talking about that. Also get into a little recruiting with you. You're listening to J.C. Sherbert, Bill Gunner, she's Jen Jensen. It's the early game. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing, where owner and founder Larry Leitner and his team, they're ready to help with your roofing needs. They've been the proven leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry for nearly 30 years. And while you today are listening to this and you're thinking about football season or what you're going to grill today or what you're going to do this coming weekend, Larry Leitner and Mid-State Roofing are thinking about your roof. They're wanting to make sure that when these summer thunderstorms come up, you heard Jen mention some of that coming up the Thursday, they want to make sure your roof is ready to handle it. So give them a call because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Mid-State Roofing is ready to put you in a maintenance contract and help protect your operation. Keep it dry and running long into the future. 803-356-1919. Again, that's 803-356-1919. Give Mid-State Roofing a call today. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
It's Jen for CHW Cabinetry in Lexington. And hey, when we had to do that demolition in the kitchen, it was a mess, an absolute mess. They guided us, though, CHW Cabinetry in Lexington guided us in choosing accessories, getting that layout done, and then the photorealistic rendering. I just came across that the other day, and it looked just like how our kitchen ended up turning out. So that was so helpful in pulling everything else together. But kitchens, that's not all they do. If you have those wire hanging racks in your closet and you're wanting to get those changed out, maybe you want some drawers in your closet, make everything a little more functional, they can help with that. If you have a home office workspace and you'd like to make that even better, CHW Cabinetry can help as well. Guest bath, we even just put in a cabinet in there. CHWCabinetry.com, 803-520-6837, also the place to call. Make sure to tell them Jen Jensen sent you. CHW Cabinetry, passion from inspiration to installation.
Eight zero three 404-6100. We're going to keep JC for one extra segment this morning and pick his brain about a few different things as we've been talking about just some college football, some South Carolina football, because we are just 3 weeks away from SEC Media Days in Dallas, where, as we played that Seth Emerson clip just a little while ago, we'll actually talk more about football hopefully this year. Who's going to win, who's going to lose, what coaches maybe are on the hot seat. And speaking of being on the hot seat, JC, one of our listeners, our watchers on our live stream, wanting your opinion. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this because we discussed it yesterday more for the stupidity of what it was. But the odd article that came out with the anonymous coach who basically says that Shane Beamer's either on the hot seat or the program's dead in the water. I kind of railed against it yesterday, saying you and I have been in this business. You write some stuff during the summer that's not always the best stuff, and you just grab sources. But your thought on a coach or how that has come about?
Those anonymous, I guess, Athlon and Lindy's both do them. And if you read most of them, I mean, they're not. That one was a big negative one. So, I wonder who wrote that one. I mean, I don't know. I don't look at South Carolina's roster and personnel and I see a program dead in the water. I mean, I hung out with most of their offensive line this weekend, and I mean, there's probably not a better looking young group, and I don't want to say in the country because I haven't seen everybody in the country, but it's one of the better ones. Just looking at these guys, my gosh, and they're all young. You've got a running back that was an All-American 2 years ago that's full speed. You got a dual threat quarterback that's what we call in our business a freak because you're not supposed to be able to run that fast if you're that big. You have to be able to throw that well if you can. Okay, so could they use some size at receiver? Absolutely. That's a question mark. I think that, you're replacing a good corner in Marcellus Dial. O'Donnell Fortune, it's up to him to kind of be the next Dial, the next man up and be the dominant corner. But, you got Macari Swain, though, who's a really, really highly touted recruit, battling for that other spot along with Judge Collier, one of those in-state kids. You got a really good group at safety. What they did on the front seven in the portal is totally understated. I mean, you think about the snaps the front seven had to play last year, Bill. And I'm not saying that's the reason the defense was bad. There were obviously some issues that needed to fix that were not fixed until later in the year. But, God, who said it? Muschamp, fatigue makes cowards of us all. That defense everybody from Stone Bland to Debo Williams to Boogie and Tonka and those guys up front, man, they played a ton of snaps. I mean, in the SEC, that can make you wilt in a hurry. And now you got some guys you can rotate in. They got from the portal. Dylan Stewart's coming in. He's here. I talked to a contact over the weekend. He's everything they thought and then some. So there's a promising young player. You talk about running back and the issues they've had so far. Well, they fixed it in the two shakes of a lamb's tail. You got to credit Taylor Edwards and Shane Beamer and Dowell Loggins for that because Marquell Blackwell wasn't even here. And all of a sudden you got Sanders and Attaway and Howell's promising. Braswell looked better in the spring game. I think this Matt Fuller kid coming in from Georgia is going to be quite good. Mazio Bennett's a promising young receiver. And the guys they do have a receiver, I think there's a misconception out there too, Bill, that this is like 2020 or 2021, where the receiving core was just not up to snuff, right? That's not true. There's just not the guy that you look to and go, that's the number one guy. There's a lot of guys that were actually productive elsewhere as well. Plus, they added Campbell out of the portal, and then Jacobs. Florida State people talk very highly of him. He came in. So you've got options. I mean, there's a difference between not having any options and having to be like, okay, all you got Shi Smith, like poor Mike Bobo had when he was here. So you got to scheme him open all the time. Or even last year, it's basically Xavier Legette and, if Amarian's healthy, we'll use the tight end, whatever. But there's a lot more options. And I think that's important. I think that teams that have options that have question marks tend to figure it out because, it's like, you're sitting there at a buffet and you got two items. You may not find something you like. But if you got 10, you're going to find something you can eat, right? I think. So that's common sense. Now, how does it stack up against everybody else? I don't know. You got to see through the hype a little bit and look at some of these guys on these other rosters as to who they are. Not swallow the star rating argument or the the team rankings or whatever, and kind of look and see, well, who can be productive. And that's a question we're not going to be able to answer for a while. People, I think, totally overrate play calling and coaching in game. But is it important for Clayton White and Dowell Loggins to have good years? Yes, absolutely. It's important for everybody that calls plays as a coordinator every single year. So, I think that South Carolina has more on its roster than maybe people are willing to talk about. And I get it, and that's fine. I think it's good. I mean, you mentioned SEC Media Days. I guarantee you guys, South Carolina will be picked either 13th or 14th in the league. You're not going to get around it.
Yeah, I'm not. I'll be honest. That's something that we probably have to address later on. About, I think we lost JC there. We'll get him back here in just a second. But yeah, we'll have to address that in terms of where South Carolina be picked, and not to panic about where South Carolina is likely going to be picked. You look at it. There's a good chance 14, 15, 16 is where they'll be picked. I wouldn't pay any attention to that. We'll get J.C. Sherbert back on the line. He'll spend one more segment with us, and we will get you into the 8 o'clock hour. Jen Jensen back in studio. Bill Gunner, Preston Zorn will be back tomorrow, and we'll do one more segment with J.C. and wrap some things up here. You're listening to the early game on 107.5, The Game. Bill Gunner for Corley Pool Solutions. We are in the prime of the summer. Are you using your backyard pool, or does it have algae in it? Has it got some green stuff? You can't figure out how to get it clean. Well, guess what? The pool guru, Tracy Corley, he knows how to get it clean. Give him a phone call today, 803-445-8109. You know what? Sometimes you don't even use your pool. It's just the ambiance of sitting out back, grilling out, having people over, and that pool looking beautiful. Maybe it's not always jumping in it. Well, Tracy Corley and Corley Pool Solutions want to make sure your pool looks incredible for every occasion. They believe in providing the absolute highest quality swimming pool service at the most affordable price to you. So they offer you flat rate pricing, including all of the chemicals. You heard that right. Flat rate pricing, including all of the chemicals. It's more affordable for you to use Corley Pool Solutions than for you to try and maintain your pool yourself. So call them today, 803-445-8109. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
Old Orangeburg Road at Old Barnwell Road. Still working that earlier accident. Also, I-77 northbound between exits 2 and 4. And Hugie at Blossom Street in downtown Columbia. A report of an accident there. And we're looking for a high today of 98, 99 tomorrow. Those heat indexes creeping to potentially 105. And chances for scattered thunderstorms Thursday and Friday. Highs again in the upper 90s. And that trend continues through Sunday. So welcome to summer. It's here. It's breezy right now, though, and the temperature's showing about 80 on 107.5 The Game.
One more segment with J.C. Sherbert here before we turn him loose. He has family duties coming up here in about 15 minutes, so we'll get a few more thoughts from him before we get him out of here and roll along this morning. 803-404-6100 if you want to text in on anything you have heard us talking about. Been talking a lot of Gamecock football this morning. Been kind of fun, J.C., to start really getting back into the football aspect of it. 3 weeks from today, we'll be in day 2 of SEC Media Days out there in Dallas. And you were kind of right before we lost you there for a second. You were mentioning, and I forget how you phrased it, something about being picked 13th or 14th in the SEC. And I think now that as you said that, there's going to have to be an understanding amongst the fan base. That's likely going to happen, and not to panic or lose your mind when that occurs in July.
Yeah. Prepare for it. And you know what it means?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. In fact, I think it's better if you look at like some of the SEC teams through the year. I mean, I'll use Tennessee from last year as an example. There were people talking national championship, and they're going to break Georgia's streak in November. Oh, my God. Joe Milton's the best quarterback in the history of the game. And look, man, they were very above average, I guess, 9-4. And yeah, they had some good wins, but they also had some bad losses. Florida beat them. They weren't competitive with Georgia. They weren't competitive with Missouri. And then Missouri was picked 6th. Some had them 7th, below Vanderbilt in the East. And they were coming off 7 losses, and they ended up at 6 wins. They did go to a bowl, but they lost the bowl game, and look what happened. I mean, I even thought last year, I was like, maybe this is probably the year Ole Miss takes a step back. Well, lo and behold, they were 11-2. I think a lot of people had some faith Mississippi State would be better, and they weren't. Then had a coaching change, so. I think it's all kind of relative. These predictions happen. And look, are they going to be able to pick the – chances are there'll be a lot of people that pick the SEC champion and the two that go to Atlanta. I mean, that's going to happen. But then there's also going to be in that whole part a lot of teams that they put high just based on rep, and they end up not being as good, So that's the hope. At places like South Carolina this year, Florida, and, we can talk about the schedule all we want here at South Carolina, but Florida, I wouldn't trade for their schedule.
No.
In fact, if you look at some of the rankings, outside of, I think, maybe Brad Crawford from our place at 24/7, South Carolina's not in the top 10 toughest schedules. So even though it is a tough one, and I think a lot of that's based on history, because you start talking about Carolina has not had a good record. They've never beaten Eli Drinkwitz or Lane Kiffin. History of the program. A&M's been a struggle, right? Alabama obviously is Alabama. Oklahoma going out there is, you're like, wow, at Oklahoma, that's a big deal. Kentucky has been a house of horrors up until, Beamer's come in and sort of changed that a little bit. He's 2-1. The Gamecocks have won 3 out of 5 in the series, but going up to Lexington is it's not good. Not been a good experience for the Gamecocks. So I get it. I mean, I totally understand. But, the Clemson game, it's up there. But if you look at what's happened the last 10 years, Gamecocks have played their better games against the Tigers, especially on offense up at Memorial Stadium. So, it's not a hopeless cause. I like what you said about the November thing. And keep this in mind, too. Shane Beamer's teams, the whole time he's been here, they have been significantly better in November than they have been at the beginning. Now, I'll say this. It's very important, based on what happened last year, I think, to get off to a better start because you've got a lot of negativity. In fact, I'm about to write a piece about hangovers and how I do think this fan base does have a massive hangover from last football season. It's time to hydrate. It's time to get some greasy food in you. Go to Zestos or whatever you got to do and get ready for this season. But if it starts poorly, that hangover is going to linger, right? So I do think it's important to get off to a good start. But like you said, Beamer's teams, all 3 years have gotten better down the stretch. I mean, have they been perfect? No, but they've had some of the more significant wins. I mean, probably the best win last year was Kentucky. And so that happened at the end. The previous year, Tennessee and Clemson, that happened toward the end. Florida and Auburn, and then the North Carolina Bowl game in his first year, that was toward the end. So I think people got to keep that in mind as well, is that this staff has proven that they're pretty good finishers as far as, sticking to it. And I think a lot of that has to do with Beamer. I think he does a good job of shutting out the external negativity, the external factors, as Nick Saban used to say. And so that's something to consider as well. But, I don't think it's a hopeless cause, but I will, like I said, I'm going to caution everybody, don't expect some miracle, 8th place prediction. It's a 16-team league, 1 through 16 now, so they have to pick somebody down toward the bottom.
803-404-6100. Few minutes left here with J.C. Sherbert. Real quick, big picture. Georgia will be picked, I'm assuming, to get to Atlanta. You want to take a guess? Is it Texas? Is it Alabama? Is it somebody else that I'm not thinking of? Ole Miss that gets that second? You want to take a ballpark guess as to where the media members go with this?
I think they're going to go with Texas. I think, you look at Texas. Texas did get a pretty favorable, compared to Oklahoma, they got a pretty favorable draw their first year. Like one of their road games is Vanderbilt. I think it's always a good thing. They play Mississippi State. They got Arkansas and A&M. They're 2 rivals. Now, they have to go to Arkansas in November. That's depending on what shape Arkansas is in at the time. That could always be a challenge because those Arkansas people get sky high for it. And I think the key with Texas is, are they going to be able to consistently bring it every week? Even last year, they won a lot of games, but they went through a period where TCU almost beat them. Kansas State was sitting inside the 5-yard line about to beat them. They weren't exactly dominant in the Big 12, except for kind of toward the end and then toward the beginning, and then they lost a playoff game. So, Texas has been – their problem's been they're great, immensely talented, but they've been inconsistent. So the SEC is a league where, you're not consistent. You're looking up and you're 8-4 all of a sudden. But I think think about the media, Texas, Alabama will be picked up there. I think Ole Miss is going to be a pretty popular pick to be picked highly, and from Missouri as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. A lot of folks that think this thing's a hopeless cause at South Carolina. Look, I mean, Ole Miss and Missouri are probably going to be picked, 2 of the top 5 teams in the league. Will that hold up? Who knows? But, those programs don't have any more resources than South Carolina. So look to that if you start to feel hopeless when you see the 13 or 14. So that's the thing there.
One more thing, and then I know you've got to get out here in just a second. But going back to the NIL deal from, I hate to finish with that, but from this past weekend. By the way, I had a question: who finished second in the wing eating contest? Who was second there? Was it Rashawn Lee?
I think it was Rashawn Lee. I'll have to ask Jeff Cox by 90 about that because we did give a second place prize.
Okay, all right.
I think it was Rashawn. I think Rashawn did finish second, but I don't know. Maybe I don't think it was the basketball guys or the baseball guys. You stack those guys up against 6 offensive linemen, man. That's a battle, right? But competitive eating. Who's Joey Chestnut or whatever? That dude's what 160. So sometimes those little guys will surprise you, but. I think it was Rashawn Lee, if I'm not mistaken. But, about NIL.
Well, what I was going to ask you, I had a question. You said you mentioned it, and y'all did one in Charleston last year. Is there still plans to do another one? And also how people can get involved before I let you out there to try and help out with that?
No, we just did kind of a one-off this year. There'll be some other Garnet Trust events coming up as we get closer to the season and in season. I would guess we would have another kickoff party like that. They've had it. Garnet Trust has had that the last 2 years. It's been very, very successful. Get involved. Yeah, go to garnettrust.com. You can join for as little as $10 a month. We love the $10 a month folks just as much as we love the $100 a month folks, and it all adds up. Coach Maneri for baseball, Coach Staley, Coach Paris, Coach Beamer, and then Coach Chastain and everybody else. They all need NIL dollars to flow in. So we love the Gamecocks, and as more people find out about how to help, we found that Gamecocks are willing to jump in. It's just a matter of telling people. So even if you don't want to, if you can't afford it, that's fine. But tell somebody. Tell somebody that hey, look, this is a good thing to do. Because the more the merrier, and we certainly appreciate those who are diehard supporters of NIL in South Carolina. But garnettrust.com is that website. You go right there, and the sign-up process is very easy. You can even say what sport you wanted to go to. So please help us out. We need it. Everybody needs it to compete in the toughest athletic conference maybe in the world. So that's what you're up against. But I have faith the Gamecocks will be just fine.
JC, we always appreciate it. Know you've got to get out, but thank you for taking one extra segment today, and glad to have you, man.
One more thing.
One more.
Congratulations to you, sir.
Oh.
For your Star Award nomination. I just wanted to say it's well-deserved.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We have not actually – I've put it on social media. I'll make that announcement now. We have been nominated for Best Sports Talk Show in the state of South Carolina for the Star Awards. It's us and another show, I believe, out of Greenville, and we will know the answer to that on August the 3rd is when we find out. But I appreciate that. We are –
If it's any of the shows up in Greenville, I think I'm voting for you.
Oh, thank you.
So,
thank you.
I don't have a vote, but I would vote for you.
We appreciate it. We're glad to have you as part of the program each and every Tuesday, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next week.
Certainly, buddy. Hey, y'all take care now.
You too. Take care. JC Sherbert, thebigspur.com. And there's a lot of good information there also. And I appreciate that to him. Yeah, we did not announce. Wanted to announce it today when Jen was back. Thought about holding it to tomorrow when all three of us are here. But we did learn over the weekend that our show, the early game, has been nominated as one of the top 2 shows. Again, we'll find out on August the 3rd, but we've been nominated for the Star Award, which goes to the best sports talk show here in the state. So really excited about that, and thank everybody that listens and that contributes each and every morning. People like Jamie Bradford, J.C. Sherbert, Chris Deering, who have been a part of it. Obviously, Josh Harris with Darlington. Tomorrow morning, by the way, we'll have John Strickland in with us as well to cut up and hang out. Tony Annan obviously has been a big part of our program. We just very appreciative to everybody who has been a part of our program and helped us get to where we are at. But certainly very exciting news for Jen, for myself, for Preston here to be nominated for as one of the top sports talk shows here in the state of South Carolina, which we were. And again, we'll find out the answer to that on August the 3rd. We'll come back, do a little message board mayhem, get into a little bit more hockey from last night. You're listening to the early game.
CHW Cabinetry in Lexington. Cannot recommend them enough. When we had all the demolition that had to be done in our kitchen, we had to get all new cabinets. And I'm telling you, I was not excited about the process. But when we went in there, they made me change my mind in so many ways. They helped us figure out the layout and getting the design set up. And there's some kind of fun accessories they told us about. Loved all of that. And then once we made our decisions, put in our order, we got the photorealistic rendering that helped pull everything else together. We could just take a picture of our, quote, finished kitchen and pick out all the other things that we needed to get the kitchen completed. Kitchens, that's not all they do. We recently had to have a cabinet put into a guest bath. Great service. It was an easy process. Once again, if you have a pantry, maybe a closet that you want to have more functional, they can help you with that too. Maybe even a home office workspace. Visit chwcabinetry.com or call them today at 803-520-6837. Be sure to tell them Jen Jensen sent you. CHW Cabinetry, passion from inspiration to installation. And traffic conditions across the Midlands, we're still working an earlier tie-up Old Orangeburg Road near Old Barnwell Road. Clemson near Two Notch, there's a report of an accident there, and getting things cleaned up hugely at Blossom in downtown Columbia. And heat and humidity, that's in the forecast for today and tomorrow, 98 and 99 respectively. Heat indexes could hit as high as 105. Then scattered thunderstorms are a possibility Thursday and Friday. Again, highs in the upper 90s, and that kind of continues through the weekend. But it is a warm start for sure. It's 80 on the early game.
8:19 as we get up and get going here on a Tuesday morning. As your Jen say, try and stay cool out there. It's going to be a hot one today. And last night, Texas A&M fans, they were kind of hot themselves. You had the College World Series taking place, and I know many of y'all, when you listen to announcers commentate a South Carolina game, tend to think the announcers are biased and against your team. And in this segment of Message Board Mayhem, you have some Texas A&M fans last night who took to message boards to express their opinion on the commentating by ESPN of the game. And specifically, Tennessee was able to kind of get all their stars out. Rick Barnes was there, but most importantly, Peyton Manning showed up there in Omaha. Why not in Omaha? And it's Texas A&M fans in this segment of Message Board Mayhem that really had enough. Champ Kind 11 here off of the AggieYell.com said Peyton Manning checks every box for what I see as a troll. Boring, over-controlling, conservative guy who has his rear end kissed for being successful. Another poster last night just made it very simple. Jen just said, I hate Peyton Manning with the fury of 1,000 suns. I was like, wow, that's aggressive. And then another poster last night, they know nothing about Texas A&M. It's disgusting. It's like we haven't been top 5 most of the year. So there's a little message board mayhem for you in terms of another fan base watching a broadcast and feeling like the broadcasters were completely against them. And, of course, last night, Tennessee does win their first national championship in baseball, 6-5. They got off to a great start, hitting a home run in the bottom of the first and being able to carry that momentum into the third inning with Texas A&M tied it at 1. Tennessee answered with 2 more runs. That would carry their lead all the way to the 7th where they tacked on 3 more. They were up 6-1. That is actually at the time I moved on and went completely into hockey last night. You would have A&M put 2 in the 8th, 2 more in the 9th, but Tennessee holds on 6-5. And now, kind of talked about this a little while ago, but keep an eye on Tony Vitello and what happens with his contract and what Tennessee is willing to spend. I've said for a while that what is going to separate the SEC and this new money that's coming in, and same for the Big Ten, is it football? Clemson, Florida State, any school that wants to compete and go dime for dime in football, they're going to be able to do that. Where it's going to take away from is your Olympic sports, your other sports. If you wanted to get rid of a coach or you wanted to pay to bring a baseball coach into the SEC, that's going to be easy now. You're going to see these numbers ramp up exponentially, I think, with this influx of money coming in over the next 24 months. And so, just for example, if you wanted to go get a Brian O'Connor, maybe from a Virginia or, somebody else, I'm trying to think of who else, Link Jarrett from Florida State. That's where the ACC may fall behind. I don't see if Clemson and Florida State stay in the ACC, I don't see them falling behind in football. They'll fall behind in the other sports. Keep an eye on what Tennessee pays Tony Vitello, though. Some rumors were already circulating kind of in the month of May that Tennessee was working on a massive raise and contract extension to make Tony Vitello the highest paid baseball coach in America. That would put him over $2.5 million. One of our texters earlier hit us up and said they think it's going to be closer to $3 million. But as I say all that, keep an eye on Texas. You did have a major job come open yesterday. The Texas Longhorns parting ways with their head baseball coach. That job is now open, and with Texas entering the SEC, they're going to want to be competitive. Obviously, that is a storied program, rich history there. Do they at least make Tony Vitello say no to them with some kind of massive offer? If you want one more edition of Message Board Mayhem, of course, you've already had Texas posters going to their websites and saying that they have contacts that with significant NIL money to spend and a massive contract, Tony V will be their next coach. And we'll see if that does come to fruition. Tennessee's going to pay up. They're definitely going to give an extension and a raise, but it's going to be very interesting to see how much it is, because I think it gives you an idea. I think it gives you an idea of what SEC schools are about to start doing for sports other than football. And I mentioned this a little while ago. Brent Venables over the weekend signing a contract extension himself, picking up a nice raise. He now goes up to $8.5 million is what he will be making. I thought it was kind of interesting that they went ahead and did this for Venables. 2 years ago, not really a great year in his first year as being a head coach, but he has got a deal now that is worth $51.6 million, and he will earn $8.5 million annually. Athletic director Joe Cascaglione saying that we're being proactive about contracts as best as we can, and we're watching the market. We're certainly recognizing the performance of our coaches, the role that they play in leadership, the importance of not just talking about stability and the forward thinking and what our program wants to do in tracking future success, but demonstrating it. $8.5 million. Brent Venables, it's going to be a big year for him. And you heard J.C. Sherbert mention Oklahoma and the schedule that they got for this coming season. Obviously, we all know South Carolina will be going out to Norman. Not that that's exactly a game that they're probably circling and thinking that they've got to be very competitive in that game. But if you look at the rest of Oklahoma's schedule and what they got, it's an interesting first year for Brent Venables as he picks up this new contract. Let me just give you a look. They're going to open with Temple, Houston, and Tulane. Now, the Houston game will be kind of interesting, but Temple and Tulane, they really shouldn't have much of a problem with. But then they get Tennessee on September 21st. They get at Auburn and Hugh Freeze on September 28th. They've got their game with Texas on the 12th. South Carolina follows that. At Ole Miss there, and they have Alabama and LSU to wrap up the season. So you talk about a tough schedule. I mentioned Mississippi probably being a top 10 team when South Carolina faces them. It's very realistic, depending on how LSU does and how Tennessee does, that Oklahoma could have 4 games against top 10 opponents, 5 games maybe, depending on what happens with a few other teams there as well. They also, by the way, have to go to Missouri. So the Oklahoma SEC schedule is Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama, and LSU. And Brent Venables gets that contract. We'll see how he's able to perform with that this coming season. 803-404-6100. Steve weighing in saying for Tony Vitello, it'll be $3 million at minimum. Again, that's going to be crazy. If that's what exactly they do, that is going to be very, very interesting to see what Tennessee does. And I think, again, it gives you an idea of what the SEC schools are about to start spending financially on sports other than football. We'll come back. We'll get into a few other subjects here as we roll along. You're listening to the early game on a Tuesday morning. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing. We're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mid-State Roofing is thinking about your roof and how they can protect it. And that's why 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you will speak with someone when you make a phone call. It's either an on-call technician or a Mid-State Roofing employee. So give them a phone call today and line up a maintenance contract. Let someone who is thinking about how to protect your operation, keep it dry and running long into the future, let them do that so you don't have that worry. 803-356-1919. Again, that's 803-356-1919. From high rises to hospitals, manufacturing to industrial, Mid-State Roofing designs and installs bonded systems with a protective guarantee that, again, keeps that operation dry and running long into the future. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Mid-State Roofing is ready to help you. So if you've got a leak, let Mid-State Roofing take a peek.
Taking a look at those traffic conditions out there this morning. Clemson Road near Two Notch Road, an accident. Also Faro near Beckman Drive. And Old Orangeburg Road at Old Barnwell Road, an accident as well. So be careful out there this morning. Going to be hot. 98 and 99 for the highs today and tomorrow, but looking for heat indexes of about 105. Tomorrow, 97 for the high with scattered thunderstorms, and that pattern really continues throughout the weekend. But we're starting off kind of warm. It's already 80 on the early game.
Three weeks from yesterday. That's right, 3 weeks. We will be talking a lot of college football as SEC Media Days will be taking place. The first day will be the Monday, the 15th. And that day, you'll have Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin, Shane Beamer, Clark Lee, all speaking to the media. 3 weeks from today, July the 16th, it'll be Kirby Smart, Eli Drinkowitz, Josh Heupel, and Brent Venables. Just talking about Brent Venables. He'll be making his debut there on Wednesday, July the 17th. Kalen DeBoer makes his first appearance there at SEC Media Days as head coach for Alabama. Billy Napier, Jeff Levy, and Steve Sarkisian, they'll welcome in. And on day 4 there, it'll be July the 18th, Sam Pittman, Hugh Freeze, Mark Stoops, and Mike Elko. Yesterday, Seth Emerson was on with Paul Feinbaum, and he spent a few minutes talking about coaches to be concerned about in the SEC. Let's hear what Seth Emerson had to say looking ahead to SEC Media Days.
Well, I think Arkansas, you mentioned, I covered Sam Pittman here first 4 years, I think it was, at the Kirby Smart era at Georgia, and everyone loved Sam, and I think a lot of people were rooting for him. But, it's whenever you have an athletic director have to release a statement saying that the coach is coming back for another year, you kind of put that coach front and center as the one on the biggest hot seat entering next year. That's no secret. And beyond that, you just wonder about, how much is this league going to swallow people up? Billy Napier is going to be somebody that a lot of people talk about. That's an interesting test case on the revenue sharing part of it, and does it have an effect on schools? I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but I think Billy Napier would be a big buyout for Florida. Does that give Florida a lot of pause if Florida has a tough start? Like they open against Miami, that one right away could get the Wolves at the gate there. That's another layer to this, Paul, that just makes this such an interesting year with all these changes and gives us a lot to write about. And you start to adjust expectations too. It's a 16-team conference. I think ultimately it is going to be over like a 4 or 5 year period. Everyone, maybe not Vanderbilt, but everyone will be judged on, did you over that 4 or 5 year playoff make the playoff once or get close? But within this year, we're going to see the first year of that, if that makes sense. And you're gonna like Missouri and Ole Miss. I think those are two very intriguing programs. How close do they get? Can they even get in the playoff? It's going to make for a lot of intrigue, but man, 12-team playoff may sound like a lot, but ultimately, I think in a good year, the SEC probably gets at most 4 teams in, and there's 16 teams in the league, so that means 12 teams basically have disappointing years.
A lot of interesting things there from Seth, and I go back to the Florida situation that he discusses. If Billy Napier were to be fired at the end of 2024, if he were to be fired, and I'll give you the schedule in a second and let you figure that one on your own, he would be owed 85% of the remaining contract value. That comes to $26 million. If Florida were to try and part ways with him. Now, look, Texas A&M, I think, set the bar last year for buyouts. But listen to what Florida's got this year. As you just heard Seth there say, they will open at 3:30 against Miami. That game is in Gainesville to start the season, 3:30 there. Then they get Samford, but then they got Texas A&M. They're at Mississippi State. They've got Central Florida. Remember, Gus Malzahn is there. At Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Mississippi, and Florida State. In other words, the November schedule for Florida. The November schedule is Georgia, at Texas, LSU in the Swamp, Mississippi and Lane Kiffin in the Swamp, and at Florida State. That's a rough gauntlet. We talk about South Carolina's October. Also talk about how I think that they could set themselves up for a solid November. You look at Florida's November, that's incredibly rough. And if you back that out, Tennessee, it will be October 12th, and then they'll have Kentucky on the 19th. They will get a bye week going into that November that I'm just talking about, but keep an eye on that. And again, I think Seth made a lot of really good points there also as it pertains to the college football playoff. I'm with him. Keep an eye this year on Mississippi and Missouri. Do they continuously stay as this season goes along? If they have the seasons that people are projecting them to have, all right, that's the key. You got to have the season. You got to get to that 10-win level, I think. You got to be right there. 9 wins is going to be close. I'll be interested to see if the SEC has a 9-3 team that gets the benefit of the doubt in a 12-team playoff, or do you have to get to 10 wins? How close does Missouri and Ole Miss come this year to making this 12-team playoff? Because that feels, for a while, kind of like what the ceiling would be at South Carolina. Like, will the SEC, with the strength of schedule, will the reputation of the SEC get some teams in with 9 wins, or is there going to be kind of a threshold of every year knowing we've got to get to 10 to get in? 803-404-6100, how you can weigh in on that if you want to do so. Again, SEC Media Days, not too far away, 3 weeks away, and then Shane Beamer will talk on the opening Monday along with Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin, Clark Lee as well for Vanderbilt. And year 4, I know we've talked a little bit about it. We've cut up about that article that was on 3 Sports, and it's a ridiculous article, and anonymous sources, coaches, it doesn't really matter. This is a big year. We've talked a lot of college football today, and it's been kind of fun. This is a particularly big year for the development of the program. You need to see them take a step forward. I mentioned earlier this morning, South Carolina picking up a commitment yesterday, flipping quarterback Cutter Woods out of Westside High School, had originally been committed to Wake Forest, and he'll be the quarterback of this class. All that did, though, was just move this class up to 9th in the SEC, 22nd overall, which isn't awful, but it only moved it up to 9th. You still got 8 other teams that's still in front of you, and that's why it also led us back down the path of player development. South Carolina is not in a position just yet where they're going to go out and sign a whole bunch of 5-stars and 4-stars in a recruiting class. You've got to win games. You got to win a significant number of games to attract those players, those kind of players. And then when you do get those players, they've got to they have to be hits. They've got Dylan Stewart. You get a 5-star like that, he's got to be the big-time player that you're hoping for him to be, so forth and so on with some of the other guys, Josiah Thompson as well. But South Carolina will have to develop their players. And, again, I say that because as we move forward into this college football future, into this new world, Missouri and Ole Miss, I think, are the teams you're kind of watching this year to see how they perform, where they are in certain, as we get into November, in certain college football playoff shows, rankings, whatever we end up having, to kind of understand how they're developing and where they're at given playing in the SEC. It should be a lot of fun. Glad we're starting to talk some college football. It's been a little bit more fun today, but we'll come back. We'll wrap it up with a little bit of hockey. Wrap up the hockey season, wrap up the college baseball season. You're listening to Bill Gunner. She's Jen Jensen. It's the early game. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing. For nearly 30 years, Larry Leitner and the Mid-State Roofing family, they have been the leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry, and it's their assurance that will make sure you are ready to have your roof handle any storm in front of you. So go ahead, make that phone call today, because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Midstate Roofing is there to help you with a maintenance contract. 803-356-1919. Again, it's 803-356-1919. You can visit them online as well, midstateroofing.com. Again, if you give them a phone call, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doesn't matter when, 12 p.m., 12 a.m. at night, 3 a.m., someone, an on-call technician or a Midstate Roofing employee will be there to take your phone call and help you with a maintenance contract. So make that phone call today, 803-356-1919. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you. Bill Gunner for the mortgage guru, Jacob Crowder and First Palmetto Bank. Jacob is indeed the mortgage guru in this market. I know that to be a fact because just a few years ago, I used him to help find a great interest rate, a great plan for the condo I'm in Lexington, and you need to do the same. Give him a phone call today, 803-719-1005. You can also email him, the letter J, Crowder, CROWDER, at firstpalmetto.com. The great thing about First Palmetto Bank and Jacob Crowder, they are locally owned and operated right here in the Midlands. Jacob has local decision makers, which means quick and precise underwriting. And depending on what you're looking to do, whether you're looking to buy, build, or refinance, there are plenty of options available to you. You just need to make the phone call and see what he can do. 803-719-1005. Call Jacob Crowder today. Tell him Bill Gunner sent you.
The wall, which would be fitting. 3 seconds to go. The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup.
Wild scene last night down in South Florida as the Florida Panthers go from laughingstock to destination to champion. That is the headline on on ESPN where it says, after 30 years of failure and frustration, the Panthers are now a prestige franchise. Fun. That's I had no dog in the fight last night. Edmonton, Florida. All I wanted was a great Game 7, something that kept me glued to the television, that had an intensity, and it was absolutely fantastic. I don't know if any of y'all really got into it last night, but just a neat 2-1 game. There was high energy. Preston Thorne was talking a little bit about it. I saw Terry Ford here wandering through the studios this morning, and we were talking about that final 3 minutes. Edmonton was going all out, doing everything they could to try and get a goal in to get the tie and get that thing into overtime. And Florida able to hold on for absolute dear life. And odds already out. They are the favorite to repeat next year in the 2025. But, I mean, I say odds are out. It ain't exactly like they're great odds to repeat. The excuse me, the Panthers are plus 900 or 9-1. So you can put, $10 down, win 90, you get the point. But what a fun Stanley Cup there last night, and thoroughly enjoyed that. Also, you had the baseball last night, and I'll tell you what, Jim, let's let everybody hear. This is Tony Vitello. We've talked a little bit about him. This is him in the postgame, number 6. I apologize for throwing that at you there, kind of a curveball, but let's listen to the other thing from last night. This is Tony Vitello last night after the game, talking about Tennessee's national championship.
They're fun. Loss of voice and emotion, too. They're fun, but also, it's like kids are tough these days. These guys will do whatever you ask them to do. I don't really know what happened the last pitch, but I know our fans got us through that tough inning. I guess we were intentionally giving them a couple runs or whatever Combsy was doing, but that was a group effort on the mound. Frank did an unbelievable job. It's an incredible group of guys. The team chemistry. Just be a good teammate if you're listening. If you're in the SEC, you're going to be a superstar player, but you need to be a good teammate, and that's what these guys were.
And that's Tony Vitello last night. Now, a little bit of a turn now to what that Tennessee contract will look like for him, or can Texas come in and make a bid and steal him away? Is what Tony Vitello has done there for Tennessee is absolutely phenomenal, turning them around in the manner they have. The first national championship in baseball for Tennessee last night. Also, just a reminder on that, the first number 1 seed in 25 years. The Miami Hurricanes in 1999 were the last number 1 overall seed to win the national championship. And this is also the point. Tennessee last night bouncing back. I had them dead in the water. I thought Texas A&M, Tennessee loses game 1. I thought Texas A&M would be able to win one of these 2 games and pull off what would have been a minor, according to Vegas. Not according. I know Jamie Bradford yesterday said it would not have been an upset, but according to Vegas, it would have been a minor upset. But the Vols very good last night as they put up 3 in the 7th. That kind of put the game away or gave them the insurance runs. Depends on how you want to look at it. They hold on and they win 6-5 last night. So you had those 2 things. And I mentioned one other local piece of news. South Carolina yesterday flipping Cutter Woods, quarterback originally committed to Wake Forest, flipping him from Westside High School to the University of South Carolina. So South Carolina with some recruiting news as well yesterday. One other thing just to get to here, and I'd like to get to this tomorrow, but if you want to weigh in very quickly, 803-404-6100. Charlotte City's council has okayed plans for the Bank of America Stadium renovation. Under the policy document, the city will pay $650 million toward the renovation. In return, Panthers owner David Tepper keeping the team in Charlotte through 2045. Tepper will pay the remaining $150 million up front. It is an $800 million stadium renovation plan for the Panthers that ties the team to Charlotte until 2045. Now, I ask what you think about this because, boy, David Tepper has been polarizing, and a lot of people feel like he's the next, if he's not already, but if he's not already, he is the upcoming Daniel Snyder with the way he is running that team. Tepper's already invested more than $117 million into stadium upgrades and has, again, agreed to $420 million more. It's really, really interesting to see what he's trying to build there. And as somebody who's not a fan, I'm not a fan of Bank of America Stadium, but would love to see them make that play. I don't think it's – I guess that's why I ask your opinion. I don't really enjoy going there for games. There's nothing that really stands out about it. I've been there for a couple football games. I've not been there for a soccer match yet, but it's not a place that I've ever really been thrilled or impressed with. I did see some of the renderings, and you can go and check those out online. It does look very impressive, and I would love to see Charlotte be able to build that stadium to where maybe, just maybe, they could host a Super Bowl or other big events there at Bank of America Stadium. I know they have some massive concerts there as well, but actually pretty impressive. $800 million stadium renovation plan, and again, because David Tepper, because of this contract policy, the document, this will keep the Panthers in Charlotte for another 20 years through 2045. So interesting news there yesterday. The Panthers obviously have already been in Charlotte for just almost 30 years, and we'll see kind of what happens with them, of course, this year. I don't know what you're expecting out of them in terms of record-wise and what that team is going to look like. But good news for if you are a Panthers fan, if you live in the Charlotte area, to get that kind of renovation done should be really good for them. 803-404-6100, how you can weigh in if you want to do so here. Final minutes. Reminder, coming up Thursday, the Gamecock Central Takeover will be at the Casey Firehouse Subs, 542 Knox Abbott Drive over in KC from 9 a.m. to noon. The Gamecock Central Takeover. If you want to go see Chris and Wes and Tyler and the guys.
I could go for a sub tomorrow. A Firehouse sub at that.
Thursday.
Sorry, Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah, I know you're back from vacation, all confused.
Doing that again,
yeah. Yeah, but yeah, Thursday, you can go check them out, over at Firehouse Subs, the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 9 a.m. to noon. Jen will let you leave us with your final thoughts from your trip now as you are back and ready to work with Preston and I tomorrow.
I'm thrilled to be back. Excellent. It was as hot in Illinois as it was here, and which is unusually, that's not normal for them. The venue, both for the rehearsal and for the wedding reception, were not air-conditioned venues.
Oh, no.
So that made it a little more challenging. We all glistened for multiple hours, but it was good. Everything was good. Good to get together with family and some old friends and, from back home. So it was all good. Just warm. Very warm.
Glad to have you back. And if you didn't hear, we did make a little announcement. Jen and I, of course, we've been together coming up next week. 8 years.
8 years?
8 years, and we have been, Jen and I and Preston, our show, The Early Game, has been nominated for a Star Award for Best Sports Talk Show in the state of South Carolina. We might brag a little bit about that tomorrow as a team. But appreciate everybody joining this morning. Look forward to getting Preston back in studio. John Strickland, former Gamecock offensive lineman, joins us tomorrow. Y'all have a great day.